They will be like arrows that pierce the heart, and people cannot forget it. Yes, we see people who don't forget a harsh word spoken 20 years ago, and they keep it, they bear grudges against that person for decades together. It goes on. So we should not speak harsh words, and even if somebody speaks harsh words to us, we should not take it so seriously. And even if by chance we do speak, we should always offer the soothing balm later on. It shouldn't become a habit, you know. Harsh words, soothing balm. Harsh words, soothing balm. Then the soothing balm doesn't work anymore. It loses its efficacy. Yes? Another thing that Vidura says is that excessive speech should be avoided. Because Dhritarashtra asks him a question that according to the scriptures, we are supposed to live for 100 years. Why is it that people live for less? So Vidura says there are 6 factors that cause people to live shorter life. And these 6 are swords that cut the duration of our life. Excess pride, excess speech, excess eating, anger, the desire for enjoyment, not intensive, intestinal station. You know, so obviously you eat too much and I guess that's what it means. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, the first 5 are indicative enough. And that is excessive speech. So we should not speak too much. Garrulous is the word, I think. Excessively talkative. Have you met people like that? Who can't stop talking? Just go on speaking. They start, they just go on and on and on and on and on and on. So they're actually cutting short the duration of their lives. Srila Prabhupada in the Nectar of Instruction gives the example of the croaking toad and the snake. People who talk too much, they diminish their lifespan. And so what are they doing? They're inviting death. Just like a toad likes to croak, likes the sound of its own croaking. The toad thinks its croaking is very sweet and melodious. So it stands there. Have you seen a toad croaking? Have you observed? We can learn a lot from nature. A toad stands in the edge of a pool or somewhere and it rolls up its chest and then it croaks and imagines that it's speaking very melodiously. And it goes on croaking, and what is the result of that croaking? The result is that the snake is attracted by that sound. And the snake comes and says, here is prasadam. Not prasadam, sorry, it's food. And then he gobbles up the toad. Death. So the croaking of the toad, the proud and excessive croaking of the toad, simply invites death. So similarly, we also should not fall prey to the bad habit of speaking too much. Of course, if we are given the opportunity to speak about Krishna, then no problem, we can go on speaking, but judge also whether the other person is, is careful, is still around, is still with you. One time I was giving a class on how to give class, and I was mentioning that some speakers, they close their eyes when they speak. Maybe because they want to gather their thoughts or maybe they just don't like some people in the audience or whatever. They close their eyes. I tell them, don't close your eyes because, when you open them, they may not be there anymore. So, in any case, speaking, we should be, when you get a chance to speak about Krishna, yes, you speak. But don't overdo it. In Melbourne, in the class on culture of hearing, I was narrating a small joke about one saint who was speaking about Krishna. And he was just warming up. He was a genuine saint, a great devotee. He was warming up as the evening passed. He was moving on, speaking about Krishna really nicely. And then he got so absorbed in his speech, his eyes were closed, he was in a trance. And gradually, one by one, people started getting up and walking out. It was getting late, they were feeling sleepy, they were tired. Finally, he opened his eyes, the speaker, and he saw there was only one man sitting there. And he wondered what happened to everybody else. Then he looked at the other man, this one man, and said that, you have such taste for hearing about Krishna. I've been speaking and speaking and speaking about Krishna, and you are the only one who's still here. The other one said, no, please don't give me praise that is not appropriate. Actually, the point is, you are sitting on my blanket. Until you finish, I can't go. I have to take my blanket with me. So anyway, even when you're speaking a lot about Krishna, you have to be careful that the person in front of you is receptive and is willing to hear. Otherwise, there's no point in speaking. And finally, now we'll come to the last part, Svadhyaya Abhyasanam, speaking about Krishna. We should recite the Srimad Bhagavatam, we should recite the Bhagavad Gita, we should speak about Krishna whenever possible. This is the perfection of speech. And this is a nice verse, chanted by the Kumaras. So let's recite this verse. Kamam bhavasva vrijiner nidayeshu nahastaj.
Kamam bhavasva vrijiner nidayeshu nahastaj.
Cheto livat yadnute padayorameta.
Cheto livat yadnute padayorameta.
Vachaschanas tulasivat yaditengri shobha.
Vachaschanas tulasivat yaditengri shobha.
Puryetate gunaganer yadi karnarandraha.
Puryetate gunaganer yadi karnarandraha.
Srila Prabhupada's translation. O Lord, we pray that you let us be born in any hellish condition of life, just as long as our hearts and minds are always engaged in the service of your lotus feet. Our words are made beautiful by speaking of your activities, just as tulasi leaves are beautified when offered unto your lotus feet. And as long as our ears are always filled with the chanting of your transcendental qualities. So the phrase that is relevant here for us today is Vachas chanas tulasivat yaditengri shobhaha. Let our words, vachaha, be beautified, shobhaha, by speaking about you. Just as the tulasi leaves are beautified when they are offered to the lotus feet of Krishna. The tulasi leaves have many good qualities, auspicious qualities, including the fact that they have medicinal qualities. But that is not the perfection of tulasi. The perfection of tulasi leaves, tulasi is that her leaves are offered to the lotus feet of Krishna. Similarly, we can say many nice auspicious things, but the perfection of our speech is when we speak about Krishna. This is Svadhyaya Abhyasanam. So our recitation of words of the scriptures are words connected to the scriptures, words about Krishna ultimately. And this is the absolute truth, the ultimate truth, glorification of Krishna. And there are so many verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures that stress the importance about speaking about Krishna, but I'll just give one or two samples. In the 10th canto, chapter 80, text 3, it is said, Sa vagyaya tasya gunan granite. Actual speech is that which describes the qualities of the Lord. Otherwise, it's not actual speech. pilgrimage of crows or 4 crows. This is a famous verse. It's already 9 o'clock, so I'll just read the translation. These verses are very nice actually. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are the inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. So materialistic talk is considered like a place of pilgrimage for crows. So those who engage in materialistic talk are like crows, and materialistic talk is like a place of pilgrimage for such crow-like people. But the great devotees, they are not crow-like, they are swan-like. And what is a place of pilgrimage for these swan-like devotees of the Lord? Tadvag visargo janatagha viplavo.
Tadvag visargo janatagha viplavo.
Yasmin pratishlokam abadhavatyapi.
Yasmin pratishlokam abadhavatyapi.
Namanyanantasya yashonkitaniya.
Namanyanantasya yashonkitaniya.
Shrinvanti gayanti grinanti sadhavaha.
Shrinvanti gayanti grinanti sadhavaha.
Narad Muni speaking in the first canto, 5th chapter, text 11. On the other hand, that literature which is full, and by the way, when we speak of literature, we also speak in terms of speech. That literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So speech about Krishna, glorifying Krishna's name, fame, form, pastimes, activities are glorious. And such speech constitutes the highest perfection of our speech. And in this verse it is said, even if there is some imperfection in our speech, not in terms of glorifying Krishna wrongly or in speaking something that is philosophically wrong, that should be correct. But there could be mistakes in terms of wrong construction of sentences. There could be mistakes in terms of wrong grammar, wrong choice of words, in terms of wrong pronunciation, etc. But because the object is the glorification of Krishna, even if there are such defects in our speech, that doesn't matter. The little pockmarks on the moon, full moon night, do not detract from the beauty and the cooling effect of the full moon. So similarly, even if there are such mundane defects in the glorification of Krishna, when someone is speaking about Krishna, or a real devotee, not when a non-devotee speaks, but when a devotee speaks, even if there are such mistakes, it should not matter. The talk, that speech is still glorious, still beautiful, and still like the full moon, it will cool the blazing fire of materialism in our hearts. One time, many years ago, I met one lady who was from a very wealthy family, very aristocratic Brahmana family, a very distinguished family, well known. And I happened to meet her at some program where I had gone. Later in her talk, she said, you know, you ISKCON devotees, I have seen. She said, I've seen on other programs that I have gone, I went there, there was this speaker who was speaking on a lecture of Bhagavad Gita. And the way he was pronouncing the Sanskrit verses, I just could not tolerate it. Because the pronunciation was just so bad. So why don't you in ISKCON get your devotees to chant the Sanskrit nicely? So I said, yes, you may be right that many devotees may not chant the Sanskrit verses perfectly, but then I quoted this verse. But they're speaking about Krishna. That is glorious. There are many people who pronounce Sanskrit wonderfully. They may be Sanskrit experts, but they have no devotion in their hearts for Krishna. So what is the use of their perfect recitation of the scriptures if there is no devotion in the heart? They don't have faith in what they are chanting. So that is not of much value. On the other hand, these defects that may be there in the pronunciation and grammar and syntax, etc. of devotees should be forgiven and overlooked because they are sincere devotees and they are glorifying Krishna in earnestness. So you should take it in that spirit. One time also, someone mentioned to Srila Prabhupada that your Western disciples, the pronunciation is wrong, is not perfect. So Prabhupada said, the pronunciation may not be perfect, but the renunciation is perfect. They have given up everything for me. So it is fine. That said, we should still try to pronounce properly. We have a little leeway here at the same time, but because we are sincere devotees, whatever we do for Krishna, so we should try to pronounce clearly. And much of the incorrectness in pronunciation comes about because of carelessness and negligence on our part. We don't notice the diacritic marks if we are reading in English, or we don't notice the matras if we are reading in the Devanagari script, the Sanskrit script. If you just carefully hear those who are chanting properly and pronouncing properly, and we attentively see all the marks, the diacritic marks, then we will also pronounce very nicely. But at the end of the day, what's most important is we glorify Krishna with devotion, and that glorification should be done in the when we receive this from the bona fide disciplic succession, not whimsically. Then our life will be perfect, our sense of speech will be perfect. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
We now do the break for prasadam, and we will meet again in the afternoon.